අපිත් එක්ක කන්න බොන්න hina වෙන්න බයිලා නැත්තම් hip hop කියන්නම් ඔළුවෙන් හිටගෙනම සතයක් වත් නැතුව නොමිලේ හොඳට hina වෙන්න සල්ලි කියා තම මල්ලි මරාගෙන රණ්ඩු කරාගෙන ජීවත් වෙන අය ගැන ඇහුවා දැනගත්තා කලකිරුණා බඩට ගැහුවේ කවුද ඔරවන්නේ මොකද චන්දි කියාගෙන ගැන්සි හදාගෙන සද්ද දමාගෙන දත් නැතුව බත් කාපු අය දැකලා දුක හිතුණා පරක්කු නෑ තවම හිත හදාගන්න බැරිද වරක් කිව්වා හොඳ සැපක් ඕනේ නම් බකන් නිලම් මොකද වරෙන් යන්න අපිත් එක්ක කන්න බොන්න hina එන්න බයිලා නැත්තම් hip hop කියන්නම් ඔළුවෙන් හිටගෙනම කවුද කිව්වේ දෙනින් ඇඳන් ජෙල් ගන්න සාක්කු වල මොනරු ගෙන්න ඉයස් පහයි නෝතුනකුයි ඇති කෙල්ලේ දාගන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න ජීවය මෙන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න කඳුළු පුරවාගෙන දවසම අඬන්නේ මොකටද බොක්සින්ම ලව් කරලා බැඳලා බෙර ගහලා ලොවට පෙන්නාපු කෙල්ලෝ හලපු පොරවල් දැක්කා දැන් බැංවල පච වෙනවා බැරද්ද කාගේද නීතිය අපි කාටත් එකද ජාති ජම්ම කුල බේද පටලවපු අපේම සමහර සුදු ඇඳුම ඇඳගෙන අසරණ යට දඬුවම් කෙරුවා පරක්කු නෑ තවම අපිට වෙනස් වෙන්න බැරිද වරක් කිව්වා හොඳ සැපක් ඕනේ නම් බකන් නිලම් මොකද වරෙන් යන්න අපිත් එක්ක කන්න බොන්න hina එන්න බයිලා නැත්තම් hip hop කියන්නම් ඔළුවෙන් හිටගෙනම කවුද කිව්වේ දෙනින් ඇඳන් ජෙල් ගන්න සාක්කු වල මොනරු ගෙන්න ඉයස් පහයි නෝතුනකුයි ඇති කෙල්ලේ දාගන්න ජීවත් වෙන්න This is where you wanna be. It's everything you ever want. It's everything you ever need. And it's here in front of you.
close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say you've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say we've lost our minds. I don't care if they call us crazy. Run away to a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make.
Newspapers, amazing stories from around the world.
A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. Oh, a million dreams for the world we're gonna make.
Come join the great American Railroad. 3 meals a day, roof over your head, fair and ample wages. Come, make your fortune. See the open plains of America. Opportunity awaits you, sir, out on the rails.
She'll be back. Sooner or later, she'll tire of your life, of having nothing, and she'll come running back home.
Every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million bed. The brightest colors fill my head.
A million dreams are keeping me
A
awake.
million dreams, a million dreams.
I think the world could be
A vision of the one I see.
a million dreams is all it's gonna take.
A million dreams for the world we're gonna make.
For the world we're gonna make.
Good morning. My name is Tim McGreevy. I'm going to be your Master of Ceremonies for the closing session of the Global Pulse Confederation meeting that we've had here in Colombo, Sri Lanka. I really love The Great Showman. You got a chance to see some of the great talent for the young and old as well in Sri Lanka, a very famous group. And The Greatest Showman, right? We are here as an organization, right, to feed people and also to feed people's dreams. So I think it was appropriate, right, to have this song kick off our Thursday meeting. Before we get to our panels, I want to run through just a little bit of the opportunities that we are seeing in our world, especially in the West, and certainly it's going to spread throughout the world, right? The Greatest Showman. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, it's really fantastic. Oh, Angela, you might have to help me advance. There we go. All right, so starting with a quote here from Buddha. Of course, we celebrated a Buddhist holiday here in Sri Lanka on Monday, and I love this quote: "What you think, you become; what you feel, you attract; and what you imagine, you create." And this organization in 2016 took a huge leap forward, really, as an industry with the International Year of Pulses. And you've seen this slide before, but this was the total reach that we had in the North American campaign that was sponsored by the American Pulse Association, Pulse Canada, and the USA Dry Pea and Lentil Council. But what you may not get and understand is it had a huge impact on our own domestic consumption. In fact, to the point that we had over 600,000 metric tons of increase over the past 4 years with this International Year of Pulses. And so we've been continuing to do, as a coalition between our organizations, to study consumer research and find out where our opportunities are. This is a chart that was established by the Matson Group out of San Francisco, and it shows the number of vegans, vegetarians, which are about 6% of the population, but there's 20% of the population right now that is showing that are flexitarians, right? And 65% are just playing the field and eating whatever they want. But we have a real opportunity with our organization and the coalition that we've created to really attract flexitarians to our cause. Over almost 50% of the U.S. population now considers themselves to be flexitarian, and that is what's driving this change in North America for increasing these foods. Of course, in Sri Lanka and India and all the South Asian subcontinent, we've seen this huge growth and huge consumption of these crops. But in North America, it's really quite new and very low consumption levels, but it's coming up. So next thing I'd like to talk about is meat substitutes, because there's exciting things happening on the technology side. You know, Americans, Canadians, we like burgers and we like to grill. But we are seeing some tremendous opportunities in meat substitutes. And I want to show you just a short clip on Beyond Meat and the opportunities that we have, and it tastes just like a good burger. Hit it. This new breed of burger, right, is meat-free. And it also, one of its main ingredients is peas. And look at this burger. You can't hear the sound, but it actually sizzles. There it is, right there. And it looks just like a burger, and it tastes pretty darn close as well. So the opportunities, the innovation that's happening in North America right now is just unbelievable. And not only that, we're seeing major meat companies now who are actually investing in the company that you just saw that video clip on. They've bought a major stake in Beyond Meat. Tyson is the largest meat packing company in the world. And Beyond Meat, they just bought a big stake in. So the opportunities that we have are just almost unbelievable and endless. This is a chart that shows the amount of new products that hit the shelves in 2016 and 2017, our year of the half-cup habit. We've generated over 1,100 and 1,200 new products coming on the shelves using pulses as an ingredient and in their whole form. So, as we conclude this, right, there is a pulse revolution happening, and we do have a pulse celebrity baby. This happens to be my first grandchild, Finley Marie, and I want you to know how properly branded she is. On her shirt, it says Little Lentil, right? And so she is fantastic, and she is going to lead the world in terms of the future of the pulse industry. She's cute, and she is our future. So I want to introduce the first panel of our Thursday morning, the Black Matpe and Pigeon Pea and Mung Bean Global Outlook panel. I want the panelists to come to the stage. Our moderator for today's session is Sunil Patwari. We also have panelists Sham Nasaria, Bharat Kulkarni, Muhammad Ali Balagamwala, and G. Chandrasekhar. So please come to the stage, give them a warm welcome for this global session.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, our friends from different parts of the world. Warm welcome once again to this session of the last day and the morning session, which is one of the toughest sessions because people generally hang around, do networking with friends late night, and coming to the panel in the morning is an honor for us. Thank you for joining. Team has already introduced my panel, but I'll just do a quick one once again. We have a very fantastic panel today, very, very experienced people who have been in their industry since long. I would start with Mr. Chandrasekhar. He has been writing, fighting, anything for pulses. He is one person who speaks independently to the government body, to the media, whatever is required. And he'll be helping us today to cover total Indian demand and supply. We have Mr. Shyam Narsaria. He's from Myanmar. He has been based in Myanmar, if I'm not wrong, more than 17, 18 years, and has got extensive experience in Myanmar pulses. The current products, what we have today, Pigeon Peas, Matpe, Green Mung. These are quite dominant for Myanmar. So Shyam has got a very important role to play for Myanmar production, demand, supply, balance sheet. Then we have Dr. Bharat Kulkarni. I met Dr. Bharat about 15 years back when he was establishing ECX. He was part of ECX team in Ethiopia. And recently we did a common presentation in IPGA India. And I requested him to be part of our team and to do a presentation on Africa. And Mr. Ali Balgamwala, he's from Pakistan. He'll be doing a S&D for Pakistan. So we'll start with our presentation now. And we have done a very quick production statistics, and I would like to share that. So we'll just start with pigeon peas, turol, which is also known as arad in India. So different part, they call it differently. But the main consumption for this product is India. And this product totally depend on India. So as per the current figures, what we are expecting, I'll just run 2017 figures, because 2018 in some countries is already out and some countries forecast. When we say forecast, it's more like India and Africa, and Myanmar is already out. So the production for 2017, the total production was 4.8 million tons. 2018, we are expecting 3.6. And there is a demand of close to 3.5 million tons. On detail, because this is more Indian-centric, so I'll request Mr. Chandrasekhar later to cover in his speech. And this is for pigeon peas. Then we have black Matpe, which is known as Udad in India and marsh in Pakistan. Again, the main production and demand is out of India. We have other country also active. So the total production is 3.8, which will forecast to reduce about 3.45 in 2018. And the consumption is 3.67. This figure is something to note, which is very, very interesting. 2018, we are expecting a production of 3.45 and demand of 3.67. If you see in demand, there are countries like Bangladesh. Bangladesh was buying very less. They have started buying, importing more because the price is very low. Black Matpe, we have traded as high as $2,000. This year we are trading $400. It's 20% of the value. In GPC ECX meeting, we are talking about increasing demand, consumption of pulses. We can see it's happening. As and when the prices are low, the demand increase. Pakistan, they consume close to 100,000 tons. Bangladesh have started eating more. Nepal, their own consumption is small, but currently they are becoming very prominent because of India. India, they put a lot of restrictions, so Nepal is becoming prominent. And so I think next year would be a big challenge for black Matpe if the current policy continues. If India comes to buy, I won't be surprised that we are again selling black Matpe in 1,000, 1,005. Anything can happen. What's happening in Myanmar, again, Shyam will cover. I'll just give you a brief. Basically, overall, farmers are deciding to slow down. And that's why you can see the figures here. 2018, we are saying 0.45. Maybe 2019, it can be much more lower. This year, 20% down, 30% down. Certain commodities are like almost 50% down next year. It's really, sometimes I'm finding it very scary. Green Mung, we have covered few countries because it's again a very, very dynamic commodity with a lot of countries involved. And we could manage to more focus on the countries which we are doing for Udad and Turol. So India, close to 1.7, and the demand is currently almost like 2.3, 2.4. I'm talking about only these 4 countries. We are not covering China, Uzbekistan, and green mung is like produced in maybe 10, 15 more countries. So we don't have a very specific and clear data, so we have not compiled in this. So overall, green mung is quite active these days because China is very active in the market. And because of China, the prices are high, demand is good. So overall, this commodity is looking a bit bullish. So this is on green mung. And before I hand over to my panel, I would just like to once again thank GPC for evolving it such a nice way. I have been involved with cystal iptics since about 17, 18 years. And every year I see it's becoming more and more interesting, more systematic, more planned. Thank you so much to Mr. Hussain and his dynamic GPC entire team. Without this team, we cannot be having such a beautiful event, nice day. Everything is getting better year by year. Thank you, GPC team, for giving us such a nice event, and we hope you'll have much more interesting thing coming up with GPC. We're talking about app, we are talking about LinkedIn. If you need a job, we are looking at GPC profiles. So a lot of interesting things are coming up. We have to just wait and see. And from here, I would like to start with Mr. Shyam Narsaria to take over for Myanmar and give a balance sheet of Myanmar, and then we'll take over one by one. Thank you. Shyam.
Good morning. I start with Myanmar. The production of black Matpe, two-hole, and green mung bean is equal to 80% of Myanmar's pulses production. And Myanmar used to export 75% of its pulses production to India. But the severe restrictions by India limiting the import of black Matpe, two-hole, and green mung bean has quickly and adversely affected the Myanmar pulses market. This has put a lot of pressure on Myanmar producers who rely on export to India. To start with black Matpe details, the average export of black Matpe from Myanmar is 600,000 metric ton. In the year 2017, the export of black Matpe was 550,000 metric ton. The carryover stock in 2018 was 150,000 metric ton, and the current year production, that is of 2018, is 450,000 metric ton. So the current year's availability is 600,000 metric ton. Now, recently we see India allowed import of 150,000 metric ton of black Matpe. The procedure of that to be notified by the government. And say 250,000 metric ton can be exported to other countries like Nepal, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and UAE. And another 50,000 metric ton can be exported as processed pulses. So Myanmar is still left with 150,000 metric ton of black Matpe for the year 2019. For tour-hole, the average export of tour-hole from Myanmar is 250,000 metric ton. In the year 2017, the export of tour-hole from Myanmar was 250,000 metric ton. The carryover stock in 2018 was 100,000 metric ton. And the current year production, that is of 2018, is 150,000 metric ton. So the current year's availability is 250,000 metric ton. Out of this, around 100,000 metric ton can be exported to countries like Nepal and UAE. And another 50,000 metric ton can be exported as processed pulses. So Myanmar is still left with a surplus of 100,000 metric ton for tour-hole. And in the last recent notification, India did not give any details for the import of tour-hole for the current financial year. Coming to green mung bean, the average export for green mung bean from Myanmar is 300,000 metric ton. In the year 2017, the export was at par with 300,000 metric ton, and there is no carry forward stock for the year from the year 2017. The current year production is expected to be 350,000 metric ton, and there is good demand for green mung bean from the China market. And Myanmar is not dependent on India for green mung bean export. Most of the green mung bean exported to China is through the Myanmar-China border trade. Now, evaluating the current scenario, means what it is going on, the price which is going on in the current market, we can say the black Matpe production is expected to be down in 2019 to around 200,000 metric ton. Tour-hole can be down to 50,000 metric ton, but green mung bean production can go to 400,000 metric ton because there is a consistent demand from the China market. So we can say, to conclude, we can say for black Matpe production can be down to 1/3 of the actual production, what is the average production. Tour-hole can be down to 1/6 of the average production, but black Matpe, for green mung bean, we can see 30% rise in the production as there is a good demand always from the China market. Over to Mr. Sunil.
Thank you, Shyam, for giving a very good outlook. I would like to just ask one or two more questions here. When you are saying the production is coming down, so what Myanmar is going to replace this one with? That is my first question, because I understand Myanmar land is very fertile. Myanmar is known as a country of golden land. It rains almost 6 months in Myanmar. The land is so fertile, it is naturally organic. You put anything there, you get a crop. So it's really a very, very auspicious, because they believe in a lot of religion, and the land is very lucky for them. So that is my first question. And the second question is, when you say the production, like I'm finding it really scary for black Matpe and Turhol. When you say Turhol 50,000 ton, and say 1 year India is a shortage, and when we come to Africa, we'll know what's happening in Africa. We'll again get a surprise package. So what prices do you see will happen, say post 2019, post India election, if there is one bad crop or bad rain? So these two questions I have for you, Shyam.
Coming to your first question, like the cost of production in MEMA for Turhol is somewhere between $350 to $400. The current price of Turhol in MEMA is around $290 to $300. And previously it went down to say $250. So because of the loss to the farmers, they will definitely switch to other items, like for Turhol will replace sesame seed or maybe yellow maize. In Black Matpe area, they will switch to green moving and maybe groundnut or maybe a sunflower. And your second question is?
The price, if the production falls so much, and if one bad crop, say in India, so what do you expect price to happen? Do you see the prices of 2016, 17 coming again on what is there? And then maybe during Mr. Chandra's time, I would ask him that how he see India would react on that.
See, the MEMA almost adjusted its production. For the year 2018, you see the production is less by 25%, and Turhol is less by 50%. For 2019, there will be even lesser production. Now the India market is on more pressure because of the lower prices in Myanmar. As we can see, the production of black Matpe in 2019 will be 1/3, and Turhol will be 1/6. I think that will be sufficient to export for other countries. So MEMA will not be in pressure to supply. Whatever the demand will be there other than India, MEMA have that cargo. So in 2019, again, I think the prices will be well above the MSP prices in India.
Okay, thank you, Shyam. I will now request Dr. Bharat Kulkarni. He would give us an outlook on Africa. Bharat Bhai.
Thank you, sir, and good morning to all of you. If you look at Africa, especially in the case of Tur and Mung, Africa is one of the major suppliers to India for Tur, had been a major supplier for Tur in India. Out of the total import of Tur that India does, about 47% comes from Africa. This is divided into 3 major countries, and some new origins have started. The 3 traditional suppliers have been Tanzania, which supplies around 27%. Then you have Mozambique, which supplies around 15%. And then you have, say, other origins. Sudan has started to come in a big way, had started to come in a big way in recent past. So that way, around 47 to, say, 48% of the total import of Tur comes from Africa. If you look at what is the outlook for Africa, we have to go back 2 years back and see how Africa actually started with Tur. 2 years back, when the Indian Tur market was struggling and the prices were shooting up, the government of India reached out to Africa with various resources, and they said, we want Africa to grow as much as pulses as they can. Several initiatives were taken, and that resulted into an increase of production in Africa. Roughly 25 to 30% increase in production happened in 2017. So the increased level of production roughly around, was roughly around 500,000 tons in Africa, which included Tanzania producing around 135 tons, Malawi producing another 120,000 tons, Mozambique producing, say, close to 100,000 tons. Then you had Sudan producing about 60 to 70,000 tons and others. So that made up the total supply from Africa. Unfortunately, a lot of this stuff does not represent the actual production. The reason is this is the harvested stuff. There a lot of production that was done by the African farmers never got harvested because of the price crash. So in Kenya, there's an estimate that about say 15% of the total harvested, 15% of the total crop did not get harvested. It was left on the fields and burned by the farmers just because they had no market to sell. So that has adversely affected Africa in Tur. The estimate for 2018 has been that the production would go down by about 40 to 50% because of the lack of market. The carryover stocks are significantly high. In Tanzania, we are expecting about 50,000 tons of carryover stock. In Malawi, there's another 50,000 tons which is not sold. Mozambique, in spite of the MOU and in spite of the bilateral agreement with the government of India, still there is a 40 to 45,000 tons that is remaining. And same is the story with about every African supplier. So 2018, if you look at, we are expecting that Tanzania would go down from 135 to about 60 to 65,000, which is about 50% fall. Malawi would again go back to say 50 to 55,000, which is again another 40-45% fall in production. Mozambique would go up to 70 to 75,000 tons, and the others. So that way, what we are looking at is about on an average 40 to 45% fall in Tur production from Africa. Coming to Mung, Mung, the major producer in Africa has been Kenya. About 450,000 tons of Mung is being produced by Kenya. 45,000 tons of Mung has been produced by Kenya. Tanzania produces about 55,000 tons. And Mozambique produces about 20,000 tons. So that's the level of Mung. Mung has not been so badly affected because Mung has alternate markets, and there's a local consumption of Mung as well within Africa. So, but still, given the price trends, we are expecting about, say, 30% fall in the production of Mung this year. So that's basically about Africa.
Thank you, Dr. Bharat. Again, I have two questions for you. Number one, as you have forecast the production of Africa, it's falling year by year. If I remember well, about 10 years back, Africa was just producing like 50,000 tons in one or two countries. And it went as high as 500,000 ton plus, and now decreasing again. And the forecast for coming year with such government intervention is less than 300,000 tons. And how do you see what crop again they will replace if they don't grow pigeon peas? The price trend with price drop, do you think it will support farmers and farmer will still grow whatever small quantity? Yeah, these two things. And third is the Mozambique quota which is there. Is this quota there for a couple of years or it's only there for a year? How many years the quota arrangement between Mozambique and India?
I think to answer the first question about what crops might, say, replace pigeon peas, pigeon pea is an intercropping crop. And the crop that can be replaced with pigeon pea, like in Tanzania, we are seeing this thing happening. Farmers have moved to chickpeas, which is in some quantities. And the other crop that they might move is soybean. So because soybean, there was an increase in the international prices and a lot of soybean demand from India came up. So farmers have looked at it and said probably soybean is a crop that we can move to. So a lot of acreage that has reduced from pulses, especially pigeon peas, is going into either soybean or into pigeon peas. But this has been, traditionally a lot of this crop, this acreage used to be with alternate crops of domestic consumption, which the governments in these countries went to the farmers and they said, you grow pulses because it has a better market. And when you don't find that market, there's definitely a social and a political crisis. So that's the situation. Movement into, there have been a lot of donor-driven projects to promote pulses, which has again made it a little bit difficult to switch over from, it's not that easy to switch over from pigeon peas to others, but then there is switchover happening. about the, how the farmers are actually responding to the prices and all. I think this, as I said, this has led to the fall in prices, has led to an acute situation of, say, social and political unrest in many African countries, especially Tanzania, because the farmers who gave up their crop that they could themselves consume in anticipation of a crop that they could sell and get cash, is not fetching the cash. The price that they were expecting to be about $600, $700 per ton has gone down to $180 per ton. So that has actually led to a lot of political crisis in these countries. Finally, about the Mozambique agreement is an MOU with the government of India where the government of India has agreed to buy, say, the certain quantities, about 100,000 quantities, which goes on increasing every year for 5 years. And because the restriction came in, this became a quota. Otherwise, that was a commitment from the government to buy a minimum quantity. So if there would be say maybe in a year down the line, if the import is open, then it won't remain as a quota, but it would be a major commitment by the government. So 5 years, it's...
So 5 years, there is arrangement. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bharat. So we'll move to, before we go to India, which we have kept on the last, because I find that one of the most interesting one. So Mr. Chandrasekhar has to wait for us. I would request Ali to share the figures of Pakistan, and with current price down, how do you see, does it really see demand going up? And does it really helping people to consume more and more pulses?
Thank you, Sunil Bhai. I'm just going to give a brief idea of the Pakistani agriculture scenario, followed by the specific focus on the 3 pulses we have. Basically, Pakistan is dependent on its agricultural economy, and about 18.9% of the GDP is dependent on agriculture. During 2017 and 18, we have seen the crop sector perform well, and we've had major crops such as sugarcane, rice, and cotton grow tremendously, 7, 8, and 11% respectively. Unfortunately, wheat and maize have gone down, which are major crops for us, but we do have a glut in wheat, so I guess that is a good thing for us in a way. The consumption of pulses in Pakistan generally has been going down if you look at a long-term trend. In 2000, the consumption was about 15 kg per person per capita, and this has gone down in a recent FAO report to about 7 kg, so it's about halved in about 17 years. So we are seeing increasingly that as pulses is typically the poor man's food and meat is considered more affluent, the rising trend in income has led to pulses consumption going down. This has seen a tremendous increase in our poultry and our meat industries, which are growing about 20 to 30% per annum. Coming to the crops in question, basically, let me take pigeon peas initially. Unlike India, which is the major consumer, Pakistan doesn't really consume pigeon peas that much. Our consumption would be around 15,000 metric tons, and this is pretty much covered by the local production, which is about 12 to 15,000 tons. This year we did see some imports of feed as Africa was desperate to sell after the Indian scenario. So we saw prices around 200, and that was ideal for the feed industry. So we saw about maybe around 10, 11,000 tons come in as feed, which was not a normal occurrence. For Mung, Pakistan is a producer of Mung, and we pretty much produce around, normally our production is around 130,000. Last couple of years, we've seen a decline to about 120,000. This year, expecting about 118 because of the weather issues. Our consumption is about 142,000 roundabout, and the gap that we have is pretty much covered either by the local, what we call the moat crop, which is similar in nature, or we get some imports from the Afghanistan border, and we see that that pretty much covers most of the demand-supply gap. We do see some imports maybe broken from Argentina, or if Africa is considerably cheaper, we do see some Mung coming in from there. This year we did have, I just heard recently that about 300 containers came into Pakistan this year because of some price gap. So that ended up being an anomaly in a figure. Usually our crop is divided between the two provinces, Sindh, where Karachi is, down south, and Punjab, which is a major province. And the Sindh crop is more finer in the size, whilst the Punjab crop is thicker. And hence, Sindh generally trades around right now about $480 equivalent on the import side. And Punjab, which will come in June, the main crop, will be around between 540 to 600, depending on the size. Coming to black Matpe, we have the consumption is around 100,000 tons. It's just under 100,000. And as we call it, mash, is generally a very popular thing, and you find it on the roadside cafes, etc. Usually mash dal is the preferred choice. We generally import around 85 to 88,000, mainly from Myanmar. We do see some odd figures from Thailand sometimes, if the gap is there. And the rest is pretty much covered by the Afghani crop, which is coming across the border. So we do get that. Right now, with the mash prices going down, we have seen an increase. Last year, we saw a decrease with the prices at $2,000 and $1,500. So this year, at $400 to $500 range, we had an excellent chance to consume more mash. And pretty much it was the cheapest crop available for us because it was even competing with the red lentils, which is around 410 right now. So we see around the local pricing, the FAQ quality in Sindh, where mash is grown, it's about, the crop is very insignificant, about maybe 7,000 to 8,000 tons only. And that is generally priced around $340 on the import side if you create the equivalent. And the imported is selling around 470, 75, though yesterday there was a slight increase in the pricing. Basically, coming over, I think that covers pretty much the supply and demand side. We move on to some of the issues we've been having in the markets. One of the main issues that we have is the liquidity is quite low this year due to last year's whirlwind pricing drops, and we had a lot of good companies bear a lot of pain last year. And so the liquidity this year is quite low, and people are very cautious to take a big step. We are having some issues with the quarantine, and hence we are seeing some issues with the methyl bromide as a choice of fumigant. So it doesn't really affect our imports from Myanmar because that's not an issue there. But on the Mung side, we are seeing some issues with the import of the Argentinian containers that came in recently. There's another issue that is going to come up with the non-GMO, with the Pakistani phyto authorities asking for non-GMO to be compulsory on either the phyto certificate or the site certificate being stamped by the phyto authorities. And this is supposed to come into effect on the 10th of June. So we're expecting some issues in the next month while we negotiate with the phyto authorities to try and either convince the other countries to accept this condition, or to find a way where we can easily go, find a way out of it. We don't know how. So that's pretty much it. On the consumption side, as you said, I expect with the pricing, if it stays down and India stays out, I expect black Matpe or mush to increase the consumption to about 105, 110,000.
Okay, thanks, Ali. I just would like to add to Ali. For non-GMO in Myanmar, the product is all non-GMO. Unfortunately, we don't have a specific testing system and method. If they need that, that can be done, but again, there is additional cost. But Myanmar product are non-GMO products. Thanks, Ali. I would like to straight go to Mr. Chandrasekhar because we have not much time left. And Mr. Chandrasekhar will cover the total scenario, demand supply for India. Mr. Chandrasekhar.
Thank you, Sunil. Friends, such a delight for me to be here at this annual forum. I've been a part of this for last 10 years and more, and I enjoy addressing my friends here in the global pulse industry. Like India, Sri Lanka is a cricket crazy nation. And in cricket, the captain usually sends the top 2 best batsmen to open the innings, which is exactly what Sunil did by sending them, and then you have a strong middle order batsman. The ones who come later are called night watchmen. I'm supposed to be a night watchman in cricket.
I don't agree with this. I want to keep the best for the last.
Don't worry.
So that people stay around.
The night watchman usually saves the match for the team. Okay, so don't worry. I'm fine. It is in a lighter vein. Friends, as you know, in the last 2 years, India has had some incredible expansion in production. And we also have had very large imports coinciding with very large production. That has clearly demonstrated India's inability to handle massive crops, both domestic production and imports. And these are reflected in prices. Domestic prices have collapsed because of a combination of large production and large imports. And therefore, to protect the interest of domestic growers, the government was forced to impose quantitative restrictions on certain pulses, and of course tariffs on certain other pulse varieties. This is the current situation. Currently, we have huge inventory lying in the country, and very surprisingly, and I would call it anomalously, when prices are high, like it happened in 2014, 15, and 16, when prices are high, there is demand compression and demand destruction. But at lower prices, which we are facing over the last 18 months or so, at lower prices, one would logically expect a big jump in consumption, but that's not happening. Lower prices do not trigger a big jump in consumption. And therefore, given this situation, all of us have to think as one, how best to boost consumption. And there is no country in this world where pulse consumption can have a quantum jump, except in India. Because the per capita availability and per capita consumption of pulses in India is rather low, even now, by world standards, and by the standards set by the World Health Organization. Therefore, we need to work on strategies to boost consumption in India plus in other countries. But I'm going to share with you over the next few minutes my outlook for the market, what's likely to happen over the next 5 or 6 months. Very clearly, I can see demand is going to kick in. Demand for pulses will start kicking in once Ramadan starts. It'll run for a month. And after that, August, September, October are full of festivals in India. It is that time when food consumption increases manifold. Whether it is sugar or edible oil or grains and pulses, demand will start picking up. Also, until October, from May, June until October, I'm absolutely convinced demand will spike. And by September or October, the burdensome inventory levels that we are facing currently will certainly become much lighter. This is the first proposition I want to make. The second proposition is the Indian Meteorological Department has forecast a normal southwest monsoon this year, but we still don't know the spatial and temporal distribution. We don't know how it's going to pan out between June and September. We need to wait for a proper distribution of rainfall. Notwithstanding that, my clear call, my clear sense is that pulse production in the upcoming Kharif season, for which planting will take place in June, July, and harvest in September, October, I'm expecting a drop in both acreage and in harvest. And I see very clearly, particularly Pigeon pea is going to be impacted. My estimate for pulse harvest in September, it's actually not an estimate, it's a forecast. My forecast for pulse harvest in India by September, that's in the Kharif season, would be something like 7.5 million tons versus 8.8 million tons last year. So there'll be at least 1.2 or 1.3 million ton lower crop of pulses. And I can again foresee very clearly a significant drop in pigeon pea acreage and pigeon pea production. The decline of the projected or forecast decline of 1.2 or 1.3 million tons will significantly come from pigeon pea, in my opinion, because farmers are rather upset. They have not received good prices. The government's procurement mechanism is inadequate given the daunting challenge that harvests have posed. And therefore, I'm expecting lower pigeon pea crop, also marginally lower Mung and black Matpe crops. I will not be surprised. I will not be surprised if in September or possibly early October, there is a review of the food inflation situation by the government of India. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I expect crude oil to stay at elevated levels. I expect Indian rupee, the currency, to depreciate even further. It's depreciated in the last few weeks, it will depreciate further. And as I said, the Kharif crops are not going to be great crops, including pulses. There is going to be a decline in pulse crop. And therefore, a combination of 3 C's, crude oil, currency, and crops, would most likely compel the policymakers in India to review those strong controls and restrictions on pulses import. Because the government of India will not allow inflation, food inflation, to rear its head. And then we have our general elections coming up sometime in March, April, May 2019. And therefore, a review of the food inflation situation and inflation outlook would become critical for the policymakers sometime in September, October. That gives me some confidence, some hope that there is a possibility, there's a potential for a rollback in the restrictions which the market is currently facing. I'm not saying all the restrictions will be lifted, but I'm saying there is a possibility of a rollback. Maybe the quantitative restrictions may be eased a little more. Tariffs may be reduced a bit. It's all possible. But I would think, as the Global Pulse Confederation, as the global body, GPC should actually start working with Indian policymakers and start lobbying for this kind of an outcome sometime in September or October. More important is that we need to look at strategies to boost consumption. We have a situation of oversupply. All of us have to discuss strategies to boost consumption. I have some thoughts on the subject, but I'm not sure if we have the time to discuss all that. But the sense that I'm getting from what I heard from Shyam and from Bharat is that very clearly some kind of a storm is possibly brewing on the supply side. By September or October, there could be real tightness in the availability of pigeon pea, black Matpe, and Mung. That's the sense I'm getting. What will be the extent of the tightness, what will be its impact on prices, is something I may not be able to estimate at this point of time. But I suspect, and I can see actually signals of an emerging storm that can choke, that can reduce supplies by September, October of the three crops that we are discussing at the moment. But also remember, the government of India holds 1.1 million tons of PGNP as buffer stock, as stocks that are procured. That will have to be released slowly. And I'm sure that will be released when we have, when the festival demand starts to kick in, that will be released, and that would augment domestic supplies and possibly keep prices under check. But post-September, from the time of the next harvest, I will not be surprised to see a much tighter demand-supply situation, much tighter balance sheet for the three crops that we are discussing this morning. Thank you. If you have any questions, of course, I'll be happy to answer.
Before I go to question-answer session, I have one question for Mr. Chandrasekhar, which is very, very important and everybody is looking forward for. The government policy. How does he see the current Indian government policy restrictions for black Matpe, mung bean, turhol, and how much in clarity does he feel? He cannot decide, but does his opinion is it will be there, because they come out with a policy and they don't give a clarity, and people keep looking for clarity for a couple of months. By the time, it's too much delay. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar, can you just touch base on that?
Sunil, as you know, I've written several commentaries on the subject and spoken on television on this. It is unfortunate that the government of India held out promises to, say, East African nations to produce more. And they did produce more. And one fine morning you say, no, I'm going to restrict imports from your country. I think it is unfortunate, and I've written in very strong words that this should not have happened. But the fact remains that there is now a quantitative restriction on import of the three crops that we are talking about. My sense is that the quantity ceiling for 2018-19 has been announced, but the procedure has not been announced. I suspect the government is buying time. They will delay announcement of the procedure as much as possible, probably the next 2 months. I won't be surprised if that happens, because they would also look at the onset of the monsoon and the progress of sowing for the Kharif crop. But at some stage, they will have to open up the policy and announce the procedure, because you can't postpone it indefinitely. They'll be looking for an appropriate time, and I guess it could be end July or early August is a time they will actually announce a procedure for import, and then imports can start taking place. That would also coincide with the harvest in Africa, around August. That is one. Second, I don't see at the moment any strong possibility of a rollback in tariffs, primarily on yellow pea and on lentils. But again, as I said, in the month of September, if the review suggests inflation risks, food inflation risks in India, I think the government will not hesitate to even roll back the tariffs partially. This is the call I would take today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chandrasekhar. So we'll go straight to question-answer sessions. I'll just pick up some popular one. Would depend on likes here. So my first question is to Shyam. How many crops have Myanmar per year? If it is more than one, do they grow pulses on both crops?
Myanmar has one major crop, that is for rice. But for pulses, it comes round the year. Like black Matpe, the harvesting time is February and March. For turhol, the harvesting time is December and January. For green Mung, it comes 4 times in a year. January and February is the harvesting time for the southern part of Myanmar, which is called the Khaya Mung. In the central Myanmar, it comes the anya from that region. The harvesting time is May to July. Then comes is the Tangu region, which is October. So Myanmar have 3 to 4 varieties of Mung coming round the year.
Yep. So for black Matpe, there is only one crop in Myanmar, and Turol also one crop. One of the most popular questions, again for Mr. Chandrasekhar, if India to become self-sufficient in pulses, do you forecast pulses trade collapsing? Actually, I am seeing this year already most of the pulses trader out of India and internationally are not happy and in a bad shape. Mr. Chandrasekhar.
In fact, I wrote a commentary probably a couple of months ago during the Pulse Conclave in Delhi, or a little later probably, when the government claimed that we have become self-sufficient. Far from it. Far from it. We have not reached self-sufficiency, and I don't see India reaching self-sufficiency in pulses in the next 5 years at least. That because our agriculture is vulnerable, our agriculture is fragile, and I've always said we are just one bad monsoon away from a major farm disaster. For self-sufficiency is a good objective, good aim to work towards, but we are not going to be able to achieve it because we would be self-sufficient if we were to produce something like 30 million tons of pulses. And our current levels of production are 22 or 23 million tons. We need to produce at least 1/3 more. And we don't have so much land, we will not be able to handle so much of demand, so much of inventory, so much of production. That's what the last 2 years have very clearly demonstrated. And therefore, my strong belief is that pulse trade will continue. India will continue to import pulses. Don't be guided by what happened in the last 1 year. These things do happen in international trade, but the strategy for Global Pulse Confederation should be not only to look at boosting production, but more importantly, in my opinion, boosting consumption, particularly in populous countries like India and China and Bangladesh and Pakistan, and Indonesia, for example. Those are large populous countries, which is where we need to strategically communicate for a major expansion in consumption of pulses. That is what will bring a sense of balance to the world pulse market.
For boosting consumption, this is one of the major agenda for GPC this year. And it's also part of Colombo Accord, if I'm not wrong. And we would again request, appeal everybody to boost pulses as much as possible in whatever way they feel they can. They should contribute to boost pulses so that our economy, our trade is more and more healthy. The next question again for Mr. Chandra, how about government rules to import pulses next 6 months? It's like something which is there, but nothing is clear. That's what they would like to do, but maybe he would focus more on that. What is, how clear are the government rules to import pulses for next 6 months into India?
No, I think there is no clarity at the moment. The focus of the government is to support domestic growers and ensure that they get prices closer to the minimum support price. But in most cases, the prices are far below the minimum support price, and therefore, imports are not favored at all. But at the same time, the government has certain international obligations. And therefore, within the framework of those international obligations, in terms of trade policies and tariff policies, the government of India is taking some action. I don't see any significant change occurring in this trade policy over the next 4 months. But as I said earlier, most likely in September, when the Kharif crop prospects crystallize, there will be a review of inflation risks to the economy. And there, I believe, there is a small window of opportunity for the government to roll back these restrictions. Therefore, we need to bide time. We need to wait the whole of May, June, July, August, probably September, and there will be a review of the inflation situation, food availability. They look at currency, they look at the crude oil markets, they look at kharif crops, etc.
Thank you. Shyam, most of the questions are for India and Myanmar, so I couldn't divert anything to Dr. Bharat and Ali.
No issues.
And these are the most popular ones which we can see. Shyam, with Pakistan GMO issue expected to pop up, will it affect export out of Myanmar?
Of course it will affect, because Pakistan is one of the main buyers from Myanmar now, mostly for black Matpe and for chickpeas. So if any problem comes with the non-GMO issue, there will be a problem for Myanmar export.
Yep. As of now, it looks okay, but if Pakistan becomes very rigid and they start making things complicated, yes, it will impact because the current major buyer, one of the major buyer is Pakistan, on which Myanmar is dependent. There was a question, do you anticipate any MOU between India and Myanmar? I'll just take a quick one. India and Myanmar have always been in a close relationship, trying to do some sort of arrangement last 15 or 20 years. Till today, they are not successful. They have made some, were not implemented. They have been trying the best. Now Myanmar is approaching, previously India was approaching, but nothing has materialized as of now. But attempts are being made. Ministries have been exchanging a lot of dialogues, so we have to wait and see, but as of now, nothing. Shyam, Udad, do you forecast farmers in Myanmar, India would be induced to sow more Udad in Myanmar? Manages to maintain Udad price above the India MSP?
Definitely. In Myanmar, the sowing depends on the price of the commodity at the time of sowing. If the Udad price is higher, well above MSP, which is around 50, say around $700, definitely Myanmar will grow more black Matpe.
There is an interesting question which we have not covered, which I would still like to take it. And Mung, what is the status of Australia Mung crop? Are the acreage of Mung increasing in Latin America? Please update information on all valuable origins. I'll just take this one as a quick one. Yes, we have not covered all origin. That's why if you see in the Mung presentations, we have not even given the total because Mung is coming up in many more countries. So this year as a panel, we decided that we start to work on it immediately. Whatever information is available from our friends, we'll take it and we'll still try to post it on the website as a part of presentation. But as of now, we don't have accurate figures. We are not expert on certain countries, so we don't want to give a wrong picture. But if you talk about product increasing, yes, product is increasing day by day and it's growing up. So I think that's all for now. We are just on time, and I would like to thank once again to our panels for the beautiful session, and once again to GPC and the one-man driving Colombo, Mahmood Bhai, Salim Bhai with his complete team. They have been standing around, anything you need help. Thank you so much for giving us such a fantastic venue. We look forward for similar venues going down the line GPC. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's have a big round of applause for our excellent panelist and moderator, Sunil Padwari. Gentlemen, if you could just exit this way, let's get a quick picture right here, if you don't mind. And then we've got a small token of appreciation. Very good job. Sunil filled in late for us, and we really appreciate that.